You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Arya Whitner, and this is your first of, I think, 10 combination NXT Cruiserweight Classic audio reports right here on AngryMarks.com. Thank you for listening. This was a very good 2 hours of TV. Starting off with Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura, ending with Kota Ibushi. Not too bad of a bookend. But let's get going here first with NXT. The show began with the NXT champion Samoa Joe coming to the ring. This was actually Joe's first appearance live at Full Sail since NXT TakeOver, The End, when he defeated Finn Balor in a steel cage match. If you're out there and wondering why Joe hasn't been on TV since then, join the club. I have no idea. Joe told us he's here to watch Balor versus Nakamura, as is everyone in the crowd, as are so many people sitting at home. However, he feels the implications of the match are disrespectful to him, because the winner of this main event thinks that they automatically get a title shot, and Joe alerted them that this is pure fantasy. Joe said to Nakamura specifically that he brought strong style to the U.S., and if Nakamura tries him, he will leave him broken. And if Nakamura wants to do anything here in NXT, he would have to go through Joe. And that not just was for Nakamura, that was for everybody. And so that brought out Rhino of all people. Rhino of all people returned last week to destroy 3 people in a tag team match, and then spent the day wandering around Full Sail University in his gear. Rhino said he's going to go right through Joe. Joe laughed at this, walked away, and said as he was walking up the ramp that he'll beat Rhino up on the champ's time. Do you realize that Rhino and Samoa Joe were wrestling each other in TNA 10 years ago? Yeah. Anyway, next week it's going to be Bayley versus Nia Jax for the 3rd time, American Alpha versus the Authors of Pain, and Samoa Joe versus Rhino. And before getting into the opening match of the show, does anyone else notice and hate the commercial for the Scott Hall DVD, and how it starts with, at 8 years old, I was addicted, before they insert like a dramatic pause, and he finishes by saying, to wrestling. Like, Scott Hall's had enough problems, and if you hear Scott Hall say, at 8 years old, I became addicted, you think it was to something stronger than wrestling. Just saying, they probably could have not used that one. We then got our opener, which also doubled as our main event. Finn Balor, for the first time in the United States, going one-on-one with Shinsuke Nakamura. They set this up like a pay-per-view main event, complete with a long pre-match video package, and of course the main event ring introductions they do on pretty much every show at this point. This was an excellent match. I should point out that they killed so much time between the opening segment and commercials and them walking to the ring and ring introduction that the bell didn't even ring until 8:27. So for those of you who are history buffs like myself and wondering which match was longer, this or the Sami Zayn Samoa Joe one-match show match a few months ago, it was Zayn and Joe. But as expected, this match started slow with Balor getting the better of it. Finn pushed him up against the ropes and gave him the Bullet Club DX Click Too Sweet hand sign, which caused the fans to pop, but caused Nakamura to hit Balor very hard. We came back from our first commercial break. Nakamura shot Balor into the corner and then began running at him. However, Balor came out of the corner with a low drop kick, injuring the knee of Nakamura. Balor at one point went for a Mexican surfboard, but Shinsuke wouldn't give up his arms, so Balor leapt up into the air and smashed Nakamura's knees on the canvas. Balor used a number of submissions, including an ankle hook and this weird knee hold that looked kind of like a leg scissors. They actually, at no point did either man actually go for a near fall until about 20 minutes into the match. Balor hit a reverse 1916, which, if you don't remember, it's the name for the Bloody Sunday DVD, which Nakamura kicked out of. And the fans, by the way, they were loving this, chanting, "This is awesome." Nakamura fought back with a running kick, and Balor then kicked out of a Kinshasa to the back of the head. Balor hit this was a wacky move, where Balor hit a double knee to the chest. Nakamura fell down, and as Nakamura fell down, he fell in the perfect position as Balor came crashing down with a foot stomp to the chest. Weird, I know. Anyway, Balor went for the coup de grace. Nakamura rolled out of the way, hit a knee strike from the middle rope, and finally picked up the win with the Kinshasa. This was an epic match, and one that will be remembered for a very long time. The two men shook hands after the match, gave each other a fist pound, and bowed as the fans gave them the big standing ovation. This was an NXT worth going out of your way to see, and yeah, it was a nice segue there to the Cruiserweight Classic. The CWC started with a video narrated by Triple H showing a lot of old WCW Cruiserweight clips mixed in with Evolve clips, and then clips of the guys working out in the WWE ring. This was a very, very different presentation from your normal WWE presentation. This was actually more like watching a UFC show than anything else, as they would bring them in, they'd bring in each competitor in the match, they would show a tail of the tape of both men, they would have the announcer introduce them, then have the referee pull them in to explain the rules and instructions of the match, gave them the opportunity to shake hands, announced the time limit. This was so different than your normal WWE. It was weird to watch. And then at the end of the match, winner and loser stood in the middle of the ring, and they waited for the announcer to announce the winner, and then the referee raised one of their hands. The show started with the best match so far at the tournament, at least of the first show anyway. It was Gran Metalik versus Alejandro Saez. I also want to point out they changed the staging area around, so it wasn't just like the NXT stage. They still had the same big Titantron, but they moved the little tunnel off to the left and filled in the rest with seats. So it just looked different than Full Sail University usually looks, basically. They mentioned that Saez had to cut 30 pounds to reach the weight limit of 205 pounds, and this was an offensive showcase, for lack of a better word. Saez hit a really nice springboard missile dropkick. Metalik at one point was literally walking the middle rope better than most people can walk down the street. And at one point he did a springboard dive where he did the springboard off of the middle rope and then dove over the top rope to the floor. Just looked amazing. Metalik is so fluid, and he's such a great flyer, and I know this might be the worst compliment to your mind, or to most people's minds when I say this, but it reminded me a lot of Mystico when he started in WWE. His first few matches before he got his horrible reputation that he ended up with. But he was so different, and it wasn't like he flew, it was like he floated. And Metalik, he floated when he would jump out at people. And Size, by the way, he, was no slouch either. At one point, he used a running shooting star press outside the ring, but back in the ring, Metalik picked up the win with the Michinoku driver, and he will face the winner of Tajiri versus Damian Slater, which is next week. Then we got Ho Lun versus Aria Davari. Davari, the brother of former WWE and TNA wrestler Sean Davari, decided to steal my name and add an I to the middle. And before somebody emails me or Facebooks me, I know that he's been wrestling for a while. I know that's been his name longer than it's been my name. Please don't bother complaining to me about that. Davari is actually the first heel of the tournament, as he refused to shake hands at the start of the match. In my opinion, they should have saved this match until next week or even the week after, when we might be like, oh my god, he didn't shake hands. But at this point, it was the second match of the entire tournament, so it wasn't as big of a deal, at least in my mind. They didn't shake hands. But to be fair, Vince Russo would have probably had this happen in the first match. So, at least they kept this for the second match. This match was very different from the opener and was easily the weakest match of the show. Davari kept Lun grounded. The fans did start chanting a little bit for Ho, but for the most part, they were quiet for most of this show, with the exception of parts of the main event. But Davari slapped around Lun at one point, which was Lun's cue to make a comeback. Davari used a really nice roaring elbow, but he missed a frog splash, and so Lun first picked up a near fall with a super kick, and then won with a bridging German suplex. He will face the winner of Noam Dar versus Gurv Shira, which I'm not sure the date of that match, but, it's coming up. Cedric Alexander versus Clemente Pecho. Clemente was trained by Lance Storm. Cedric Alexander was mostly in Ring of Honor, and most people know him from Ring of Honor, excuse me. This match, like I mentioned, was better than the last match by far. Pecho hits hard, and he actually took most of the match. They countered each other's counters into more counters before Pecho knocked Alexander ass over tea kettle with a clothesline at one point. Alexander finally won after picking Pecho up for a back suplex, but dropping him with a double knee to the spine, kind of a reverse Darren Young move. And Alexander will face the winner of our main event, Kota Ibushi versus Sean Maluda. I felt bad for Sean Maluda because this crowd, the people knew anyway, they knew Kota Ibushi, and there was exactly one person in the crowd who knew Sean Maluda, and that one poor woman got into a horrible dueling chant where she chanted for Sean Maluda, and then about 100 people chanted much more loudly for Kota Ibushi. Poor Maluda. Kota kept things simple for the most part early. He used one kick to the leg and one kick to the chest, which was more than enough to pop the crowd. Maluda went for a frog splash and became the second person tonight to miss that move. Maluda jumped off the middle rope to use a code breaker, which just seemed kind of pointless. And then Maluda nearly killed himself when he did a running flip dive over the top rope. And he's like, the whole thing, he kept flipping and flipping. And he didn't judge, I guess, how much apron there is in a WWE ring, because he tripped on the apron. And if Ibushi wasn't there to catch him, Maluda would have hurt himself bad. But thankfully, Ibushi was there, caught him. It didn't look terrible. And good, because Maluda didn't get hurt, Maluda did hit a beautiful drop kick, which was compared to both Lance Storm and Kazuchika Okada. Ibushi went for a superplex, however he got shoved off the top rope. Ibushi, while standing on the mat, gave Maluta, who was standing on the ropes, a Pele kick. Maluta fell from the top rope, crashing to the pretty black mats outside the ring. Ibushi used his wacky, running, jumping moonsault, where he's in the ring, then he jumps over the top rope to the middle rope, and does the moonsault from there. And finally he won with a last ride sit-out powerbomb. So, 1 week down, and the Cruiserweight Classic is off to a roaring start with 9 weeks to go. So I want to thank you all for listening to this. Go check out both shows and just enjoy 2 hours of really good wrestling this week. Thank you all for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you again in 7 days.